Hey there, beautiful soul. Welcome to Cultivate Your Joyful Life, where we believe true fulfillment blooms from within. I'm Emily Liu, your certified life coach, and I'm on a mission to help you create a life you freaking love. In a world where we constantly juggle priorities from career to parenting, relationships to health, it's easy to feel overwhelmed or not enough. But don't worry, in this corner of the universe, I'm here to share practical tips and inspiration to help you access your inner joy right now. So, grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's cultivate your joyful life together. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode. Oh my gosh, I'm recording this intro on a high right now because I just finished day 1 of our job search bootcamp and I am just so elated. I think the last time I hosted this, it was 6 months ago. So anytime I haven't done anything for 6 months, I feel really rusty and nervous about doing what I'm about to do. But the moment that I went live, I was like, yes, this is why I do what I do. I remember why I show up and help people with their job search is because of our participants. Everyone was so engaged, so professional, so kind, so encouraging. And in yesterday's training, at the end of it, I asked one of our Happily Haired Formula alumni, Sharon, to share her job search journey. And she really reminded me of why I do what I do. When she was laid off in January, she was feeling not so confident. She said, I always felt like I was missing skills or just chasing after the next thing and never really stopping to reflect enough of who I am and what I can offer. And oh, wow, look at all of these achievements and accomplishments that I have. So typical of a high achiever, by the way. And she was sharing last night how one of her New Year's resolutions was to just become more confident in herself. And let me tell you, last night she absolutely glowed and she shares and demonstrates that confidence is just a skill that can be learned, just like job search skills. Like everything can be mastered. If you don't think you're good at getting clarity or listening to your own intuition or putting yourself out there or marketing yourself or networking or interviewing or even negotiating, she's proof that you can learn any skill and apply it and master it. And so what's really cool is she was sharing that she got laid off, really felt like she wanted to be intentional about the next job. She had a health tech background, but wanted to move into fintech. Never had any fintech experience before. And yet she got so clear on what she wanted. She got intentional about it. She started to network with the right people, showed up in the right rooms, and she landed a job. And what's beautiful also is that when she got laid off, this new job actually pays her what she deserves. She said she felt underpaid at her last job, and this new job, this one career move, is an increase of 30% more in salary. So that's amazing. But also, she negotiated the second time. The first time she ever negotiated, she actually got the offer rescinded, and that's why she was so nervous and afraid to advocate for herself. But she knew that as we worked together, all the variables were not the same. And one of the biggest differences is she now knows how to negotiate with the right tact and the right professionalism and just making sure she's saying the right things. And in the end, when she negotiated, she shares that she didn't get an increase in base salary. They were very firm on offering what she was offered. However, she was able to negotiate $7,000 more in a sign-on bonus. And I think that's just really incredible. Again, the answer is no unless you ask. And worst case scenario is that they will just say no. Actually, worst case scenario is they rescind the offer. But she knew that she was doing it in a more diplomatic way and saying the right things. And the odds of getting that offer withdrawn were very, 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 very low. And she ended up getting something on top. So I'm just so proud of her. And I hope that that story wherever you are right now in your career journey just really inspires you to don't play small. Don't stay stuck. Don't feel like there's no options, because truly, Sharon's a testimony of what happens when you're able to just learn and master job search skills. So, by the way, at the end of this episode, I'll share more about the happily hired formula, because at the time of recording, we are going to actually, happily hired formula opens up today when this is released. So if you're interested in mastering job search skills, building up your confidence in every stage of your job search journey, then this program is for you. And I'll be back at the end to share more about that. Now, on to today's episode. I am very excited to introduce you to Shell Mendelson. I'm going to read her bio in just a bit, but she is a career coach who specializes in ADHD. And I feel like there's so many people that are neurodivergent. And if you are neurotypical right now, you are listening to this, you're going to get just as much value out of this episode, because one, everything she shares actually just applies to every human. The things that she shares is exactly what I walk my job search clients through. So it is very applicable, even if you're not diagnosed with ADHD. But two, maybe you know somebody who does have ADHD. And I think it's just really beautiful to be able to understand the people that we're surrounded by, because it is really difficult for ADHD people to function in a world that's not set up for ADHD. Just by putting yourself in their shoes and understanding their lens and perspective, I think can make you a better coworker, a better friend, a better partner, whatever that relationship is with somebody you know that has ADHD. All right, so here's Shell's bio. Trained by Richard Boles, the author of What Color is Your Parachute? With a master's in vocational/career counseling, Shell has more than 35 years of experience in education in the field of career counseling and coaching. Shell also brings coaching, teaching, training, and nurturing gifts to ADHD adults that focuses on illuminating, creating, and transforming lack of clarity to a well-defined direction and sustainable work life. Shell recently launched the Quintessential Coursebook, a course for ADHD adults and teens unlock your career path that breaks down and simplifies the career decision-making process for the ADHD community. Some have described her book as the most ADHD-friendly book on the market. She shares, after my own diagnosis of ADHD later in life, I profoundly understood how ADHD can impact our work experience and delay creating real work or career options that are meant just for us. Clear, focused, and real options. Without further ado, let's dig into her episode. Welcome to the show, Shel.
Thank you so much, Emily. Happy to be here.
We've been having some internet issues, but we're going to get underway. So, where to start? I would love if you can maybe just do a brief overview of what ADHD is for our listeners.
Very brief. And as I told you, I'm not an expert. So I always ask people to refer to the experts in the field. But for me, ADHD is feelings of being a square peg in a round hole. Not feeling part of the crowd, feeling like there's something off, that I don't fit in. The way I think doesn't mesh or align with most of the people in the room, if they're neurotypical. Sometimes the way I express myself, sometimes my lack of calmness or distraction, being easily distracted. Organization for me is always an issue. Planning for me has always been an issue. So these are just some of the things that I noticed before I got my diagnosis. And when I was working with all neurotypical people in my business that I created, I founded, and then it became very difficult for me to just connect with those people. I found myself thinking about things that I thought would make the company better, grow the company, and nobody could understand me because I was thinking from a very broad, big picture perspective. Many of us are very much picture thinkers. So when we try and express that to other people, sometimes it can look like you're a little bit crazy or off the wall, or it could look like you're kind of an elitist know-it-all, right? There are lots of ways that other people can perceive ADHD in another person, but it's not the same for everyone. Everybody is different.
Can I just interject and ask, did you always feel like that growing up, or was it more towards recent adult years?
I noticed it pretty much until I was diagnosed, except I never knew how to express it or knew what it was. I always thought, every time I tried to express that whole idea that you and I were talking about, where I felt like I was in the middle of Grand Central Station and all these thoughts in my head,
Mm.
like people were whizzing by me all the time. That's how it was inside my head. And
Yeah.
because I grew up inattentive, I didn't focus very well in school. I was, not the one to ask all the questions because I thought I would sound stupid. I was very quiet and kind of stayed in the background while I doodled a lot and I daydreamed a lot. And I'm not even sure sometimes how I got through high school, even though I
Mm.
have a master's degree. But I realized that when I was interested in something, I would be paying attention.
Yeah. So,
But high school was not a bastion of learning for me because there weren't very many things I was interested in high school.
mm,
So I know that people listening to this with ADHD will understand and relate to what I'm talking about.
yeah,
I
it
really
must have
do.
been kind of liberating to finally understand like what all of that noise and chatter inside your head was. Can I ask how
Mhm.
old you were when you were diagnosed, and how did you feel when you learned about the diagnosis?
This is going to shock you, but I was in my 50s.
Wow.
So, yeah. Yeah, people when they tell me I was a late bloomer to find out I had ADHD, I was 25 or 30, and I just say, you don't know what a late bloomer is, okay?
Mm,
You have no clue. So they're lucky they found out at the
yeah.
stage that they did. But yeah, I had no idea because back in the day when I was a kid, it didn't exist. There was no
Yeah.
name for it. There was no treatment, there was no management, there was no nothing. So you were just if you were quiet, either you were hyperactive and the teachers had to stop what they were doing and pay attention to that person, or you
Mm,
were the child who was like me. You were kind of like in the background. That's how I was. I was pretty much always in the background in school.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
So, wow, that's incredible that you found out at 50, but yet you managed, and it sounded like you were very successful throughout your career. Can you talk to me a little bit more about like how you managed your career with ADHD? And then we can talk about the difference after being diagnosed and like any treatment plans and like how things have shifted with the diagnosis. So, let's go to before 50. Paint the picture
oh,
of how you managed a
yes.
career with ADHD, undiagnosed.
So I didn't start my career till I was 32, but before that, in my 20s, I graduated from college. I got a teaching credential. I thought I wanted to be a teacher at one point, but I didn't really want to teach the kids that I was trained to teach. And I really didn't want to be in a public school or any kind of school setting, really. I wanted to actually work with adults, young adults. That's what it turned out to be. But I was lucky to have found the master's program where it was focused on vocational rehabilitation, and ultimately getting the training to become a career counselor through Richard Bowles's program, What Color's Your Parachute? That was what changed everything for me. Up to that point, I was successful only because I really did enjoy the work I was doing, up until the point where I didn't, because as a voc rehab counselor, I was working in a system that I became very bored with. So I just didn't enjoy it anymore. But the one thing I always knew is that when boredom started to set in, I would always find a way to move to the next thing or find different avenues. So I stayed in my field, which was counseling, and I stayed on the subject of career. So doing those two things, I found a different way to create something really powerful for myself and fun And to this day, I've never been bored with what I've done. At the time I was diagnosed, I had literally stopped doing this work to start a company because my son was very young. He loved art. And I got the bright idea to start a company called Kids Art, which is a children's art franchise now. At the time, it was nothing.
So it sounds like if you have ADHD, it's really helpful to know that you're a big picture person. You have big ideas, kind of big strategic thinking. And it's so important to be interested in the work that you're doing. Like you have to be engaged and thoroughly enjoy what it is that you're doing. And it almost sounds like having a lot of variety or like the opportunity for variety. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes, you said that beautifully.
Okay.
I think that's one of the best summaries I've ever heard.
Oh,
Absolutely.
beautiful. So,
Yes.
do you know, like, as an ADHD career coach now, like, do you find yourself telling your clients, like, these are the types of jobs or environments that are more conducive to you? Or is it still pretty open based on somebody's interest?
Absolutely not. I don't tell anybody anything about what's best for them. I help them. The process I use allows them to find that out for themselves. So it's a
Beautiful.
self discovery process, which allows them to say, this works, this doesn't work, ultimately allowing them to sift and sort opportunities that align with who they are in every way regarding their career. So it is a very powerful process in that sense that it allows you the control, which with ADHD, of course, we don't really like other people telling us what to do that much. Many of us don't like taking instruction. So the instruction has to be kept very, very simple. It has to it has to be there to some extent. There has to be some structure, but not a lot.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's the process I use. There's some structure, but it also allows you the creativity, the ability to really dive into your preferences, what makes you happy, what you're attracted to, what is the best for you in all areas. So,
I love that. It's really not a prescription, but here's the questions that you need to ask yourself to identify
yes.
what is the aligned fit for you. And can you just
Yes.
share some of your questions? I know you have a whole workbook and program around it, but what are some questions to get someone going?
Well, one of the first things I have people do, and it's not so much a question as it's an exercise, and it asks you to think back when you were a child, what the things you before all the influences came in. So one
Mm-hmm.
of the things a lot of people with ADHD and neurotypical people as well struggle with are outside influences. People telling you, you should do this. Have you thought of this? I know you're struggling. What about this? That can be the kiss of death for people with ADHD because it becomes very confusing. And if they want to please that person, they may try it and then fail, right? So before those influences started impacting you, you were a child and you were attracted to different activities. What were some of those activities you liked doing? What were the things that you just naturally loved to do? And I mean, anything from playing outside to playing games inside to drawing to learning to reading to, I mean, all of the activities that you can think of as a kid that you really enjoyed doing. That's the first clue that eventually sets us up for what some of the possibilities might be, the correct possibilities, the best fit for you later on in life. And what happens is we forget about all that. We start getting influenced. We go to school. We think, no, I got to take a job that, fits this mold or fits that mold or gets me to here, or I have to take over my parents, whatever my parents are doing. Particularly, particularly in some cultures where the parents are very explicit about what they want their kids to do. If that child has ADHD, that could be extremely difficult for that
Oh,
person.
I really love
Yeah.
that. And I know as a neurotypical person, that holds true too. I always tell my clients that you
Yeah.
can't figure out your career. Like so many people are looking outward and asking, what do you think I should do? And what do you
Hmm.
think is the right fit for me? But I always say career clarity is an inward experience, and you have to look
It
at your
is.
own insights, your own intuition, your own inner
Yes.
knowing. And so much
Yes.
of what our true essence is what we loved as children before all those external influences, as you mentioned. So, thank you so
Yes.
much for
Yeah.
highlighting all of that. I have a question for you in terms of common workplace misconceptions. Can you share some misconceptions about ADHD in career or workplace?
It always comes back to, are you in the right job? It's a very simple question.
Mm-hmm.
If you're miserable in your work, you're not in the right, it's not the right fit for you. So if it is the right fit, and hopefully you've gone through a process like this, you'll be in a much stronger, more confident place to make the best choices in terms of employers and who to work for, what kind of culture you want or environment you want to be in. All those little pieces start to come together. However, if you haven't done that kind of deep dive work, which is the work that I do with people, then you may be in a position where you actually like your work or you like your employer, but you're finding that some aspects of it are becoming overwhelming. And if only I could pass this task off to somebody else while I focus more on this area where I know I can be very productive and I can do wonderful things for my employer and enjoy the work while I'm doing it. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
much of it is really identifying the tasks that work and the ones that don't work and what kind of supports you need. So there's a whole section in the book where we talk about working conditions, and in the class, the when I work with people in person as well, we talk about
I,
working conditions. Right.
yeah, I love that. And I'm just curious when you would advise someone to tell their employer about their ADHD and like what are some reasonable accommodations that one can ask for?
It just, again, it depends on the employer. So I actually do not advise people to disclose their diagnosis before they've done what I call a self accommodation plan for themselves, which is really a very detail oriented and very specific written down plan that identifies everything that is important to them to be productive and happy and fulfilled in their work, in their environment, within their environment. So some of those things can be self accommodated, right? Some of those things you can just, already need to be there. So when you're talking to in an interview, you can ask about some of those things. So get a sense as to whether or not they're available and any adjustments you can make on your own without necessarily having to bring it up is always best. But knowing what they are first and having it written down is the key with all of that. And then as far as being able to speak with your employer, it really depends on the environment and the culture because not every single company is accommodating for for the neurodiverse community. And what often happens are people are put in these performance improvement programs because they aren't doing well. They're making little mistakes. They're getting called on the carpet. Um, and the sad thing is that people with ADHD often don't even know when that's happening. They might have a sense because people are responding a little bit different to them, even though they thought they were doing okay. But you can't always, with ADHD, you can't always see the results of what's going on around you especially if you're not enjoying the work. Really, it comes down to that. So the parts that you don't enjoy, you've got to find a way to find out if there's a way that maybe there is a task that somebody else could do and you could take over a task that you enjoy doing more. Just knowing what those tasks are, number one. Seating, sometimes certain kinds of seating and certain kind of having flexibility to walk around, to get up and walk around, because sitting in one place, I hear very often from people with ADHD sitting and staring at a computer and not being allowed to get up or being monitored, that's always kind of the not a good situation. It doesn't end well with that kind of it. So there's so many different little aspects. It could be noises, like a loud environment or an environment that doesn't have very much privacy when you really do need to have some privacy.
Hmm.
And some, you've heard of some of those open spaces that people
Yeah.
work in. With all the distractions, how hard will that be for somebody who's easily distracted?
Yeah.
You know, and then being interrupted a lot is another thing. Lots of interruptions. There's so many different things that can really impact a person's ability to get the job done and their productivity. Yeah.
Yeah. But what I love what you're saying, Shell, is that it all starts with deep self-awareness of
Yes.
like what's important to you, who are you, what do you enjoy doing, what tasks energize you, what tasks drain you. And the second part I'm really hearing about all of this is getting clear on a plan and like really writing it out and
Mm-hmm.
knowing that you can speak up in the workplace
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
find that win-win. And how do we come up together with a solution to work through this? And then most importantly, like as you advocate for yourself, not every
Mm-hmm.
job, not every company, not every environment is aligned for you. And that's okay. That's always going to happen no matter if you're neurotypical or neurodivergent. And you have the power and the control to create that more aligned path for you. But just knowing that there are solutions and that there are possibilities out there, I think it's very liberating for a lot of people who might feel like the world is not set up for them to be successful. And it really isn't. Like you said, you feel like a circle in a square.
Yes. And I think you hit the nail on the head. You did a really good job summarizing that, Emily.
Oh, thank
Bravo.
you.
Really. Um, yes. It's really important for people to feel that confidence. And the
Yeah.
only way that you can feel that really is to know what you want. So, for example, if you ask 100 people, both neurotypical and with ADHD or neurodiverse, um, what do you really want in your work? Can you be specific? Tell me what you want. How many people do you think can answer that question?
I don't
Right.
have a percentage, but I'm shaking my head. I have no idea. I know it's low.
It's low. And so imagine the impact that would not just have on just your basic fulfillment in your work, but if you knew what you wanted and you were able to articulate that, and then you can have real conversations with employers, and you know the ones that aren't going to be listening to you, they're going to be rolling their eyes, they're going to be going, you're not the company person that we need to have or whatever. Isn't it better to know that and to then be able to say, okay, I'm going to have to start at least exploring some other places that fit
Yeah,
me to a T versus the other, right?
absolutely.
There's no win-win when it's not the right environment, no matter how much you even know. If you know a lot, for example, about what you need, and that is the wrong environment you're trying to still fit into, that's not going to work. It just
Hmm.
will not work. You'll hit a wall.
Yeah.
So have being armed with all this information and having it written down. And I call it the career galaxy, completing your career galaxy, which
Mm.
has all the elements of what make up like the ideal work, including the skills you want to use, the people you want to work with, the working conditions, even the fields and the subjects that you're the most attracted to, even the kinds of rewards that you want that are important to you to get on
Yeah.
the job, both for money and for no money, you
Hmm.
know, paid and unpaid. Really important to know those things. And
Yeah.
even location, because where you live can very much impact how you feel about your work. Like if your commute is like you're having to say you're living in LA and you have to commute to from one end of town to the other. Can you imagine what that's like every day? And do you need to have a hybrid situation, part-time working from home, part-time, in an office because you just want to connect with other people? A lot of people, if you're an outgoing kind of person, if you're an extrovert kind of person, for example, COVID was not a fun time for extroverts, not a good
Yeah.
time. So it's important to know that, yeah, it's okay to work from home occasionally, but most of the time you need to be connecting with other people. So that has to be part of the equation, right? So just knowing those things allows you to set up the situation where you're in control.
I love that career galaxy. I have something very similar in my program, but I call it a career blueprint. Yours definitely
Mm.
sounds much more exciting. I love it.
Well, each one of the planets are all the little, we call them different planets that make up
Mm.
your ideal work. So you created
Oh,
this galaxy, and then the galaxy, which is like a blueprint or a roadmap, is something that you can use to sift and sort
yep.
opportunities that come your way. And as they say in law of attraction, you can't have it until you know what it is, right?
Yeah.
And when you have it written down and you understand what it is and you can clearly articulate that, your
Yeah.
chances of actually getting it are a lot better, right?
Absolutely. Oh, you have such a beautiful brain. I love the big picture thinking. Um,
It's a big picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you mentioned earlier about what it feels like to have ADHD. And I know it's something that comes up for a lot of clients that I've worked with in the past is feeling like there's a hard time to focus or to stay organized, or like even in their job search, they're like, well, I want to do this task, but then there's all these other tasks that I need to do. And then I need to create a to-do list, but then I never get through my to do list because I'm creating another to do list. So I'm just curious how somebody, because I feel like the role that we are living in, especially the workplace, is structured to be like, organized in a certain way, or there's calendars and
Yeah.
meetings. What
Yes.
would you say to somebody who's feeling that struggle of like, I'm having a really hard time focusing and completing my dedicated task?
That's what I would say to them. You'd probably need to engage with an ADHD coach, executive function coach. That would be somebody who helps you with those kinds of things, helps to give you some systems to try out. Some, especially with planning, ways to plan, gives you maybe some apps to use because there are a lot of apps out there that people can use for setting goals and doing just day-to-day stuff. And more you find more and more ADHD related ones. I don't actually recommend, that's not part of what I do. I don't like say, oh, try this or that. I do have resources that I refer people to. So I don't talk about it so much as have the resources available that they can check in and find, just try different things out for themselves. But the truth is, once they really know what they want and they're really on that trajectory of feeling empowered and confident and being in charge and not being what I call a job beggar, somebody who's
Mm-hmm.
begging, going into a job, applying for it and saying, please hire me. No, it really, in my opinion, it needs to be the other way around, where the employer is saying, what do I do to get you on board? Like,
Yeah.
you're such a good fit for this company. What do I do to get you on board? What do you need for your job in order to make this thing work all the way around? I think that's the position you want to be in, right? So you can then have a much more intelligent conversation,
Yeah.
and it can be something that's very fruitful in the end. But you've got to have that confidence, that inner confidence and knowing, and also some red lines that can't get crossed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You need to know what your boundaries are. Like what's a yes and what's a no. Like if somebody says something that you're just that's so objectionable to you that you would be subjected to on a daily basis, and you would, you kind of have to understand that you've got to have the courage to say thank you very much, but it doesn't look like a good fit. Because in the end, it's not going to help to have accumulated hours and days and maybe some pay only to be, you know, to either be fired or to walk out or have it be just a negative situation that can really crush your confidence. So,
Absolutely. And I think it perpetuates the stigma that some people have of like, I feel like I'm lacking, or because of this diagnosis, I feel like
mhm.
I have a disadvantage. But what I really hear you saying is that you need to know your strengths and really play to that and really own, like,
Yeah.
this is what I can do for you.
And I change the word strengths to skills, identifying the skills that you enjoy using the most.
Yeah.
And that's the first exercise that we do. And once you've identified those and there's another piece to all of this, and that is owning what your preferences are, owning the things that you're attracted to that are most important to you to have in your work. And we use a prioritizing tool that helps you prioritize everything. And when I always say the top 5 items are no, you can't cross this line.
Hmm.
They have to be there. So
Yeah.
that makes the sifting and sorting process so much easier.
Hmm.
It's like, yes, no, yes, no. And the thing is, when you're open and understanding again, it's like of what the things are that are important to you, it's easier for those opportunities to show up
Yes.
and you recognize them when they show up. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying any of this is easy. Okay. This is not, an easy Pollyanna kind of thing I'm talking about. I am talking about really doing the inner work and owning your preferences, which in a world of other people, say we call it safekeeping self, that little voice, the outside influences.
Hmm.
In a world with all these influences and all this propaganda about what you should, if you want this kind of work, you got to be this kind of person and you got to do these things and you gotta, and it's all on you and it's not on the employer at all. It's just the employer gets to pick and choose versus you get to pick. It's very difficult to just say this is something that I cannot, a line that I cannot cross, to have those boundaries. And
Yeah.
that takes a little bit of, it just takes some letting go, it takes some work and repetition and confidence, overall confidence.
Yeah, I love having those non-negotiables. And what I hear is shifting from like you called it a job beggar. I call it shifting it into a job magnet, like knowing that you can be selective. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Mm.
It's like you can be
Yes.
selective.
Thank you
And
for saying that. I like the job magnet. I also
yeah,
say job developer. Like you are
mm,
actually developing something for yourself.
absolutely. And
So
I
our
know a
job
lot of
creator. Yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
like you can create the job, you can open up a role for yourself. Can I
Yes.
ask, what are some of your clients' titles or industries or environments that they're in that like this is their dream job? Like I'd love to just hear the vast array of different clients you work with.
Oh, I need to get my document up that has all that. Off the
That's
top of
okay.
my
Just name
head,
like
I had
top three or five.
one that I love is engineer to library science. And then I have people who are in marketing who went to organizing, working for an organizing company. She was like a top in the top firm, and she ended up making 4 times more money. And then
Wow.
often, making the first shift does not always mean leaving the kind of work that you're doing. It could mean actually taking those skills and plugging them into an entirely new field.
Mm,
So I had somebody who was working for a bank. His dream job was to work in arts and entertainment, and he loved doing stage design and building sets and things like that. And so he ended up getting a job in a production company for a movie company, a production department of a movie company.
wow.
And he was doing exactly the same kind of work, with all the Excel spreadsheets and things like that. He was doing that work, but he said, I get to be a little bit more creative. Now I get to be in the field, and every day I'm around the kind of people I want to be around. And I'm getting to watch people do set design and sometimes participate in that. And now I have a better chance of moving into that because I'm right there every day.
Right. Oh,
So
that's so cool to hear.
that was a great shift. I thought it
Yeah.
doesn't always have to mean get, getting training in something. It very often does mean you've got to get some more training, or you've got to get a certification, or maybe do an internship, or do some very specific kinds of work to get to where you want to be. But very often it can mean just taking your transferable skills and plugging them into another field to get
Yeah.
started.
And
Yeah.
I love what you just shared about the last person, and maybe even the organizer is I can imagine that they're on their feet quite a bit and they're engaging with others versus
Yes.
like sitting behind a desk all the time, which I'm sure makes them more engaged overall and like just
Yep.
energized in their work and the variety. Those are great
Yes, that's what
examples.
that was well put. Yeah. And not only that, both of them made like 4 times the money.
Wow, that's
I mean,
beautiful.
the last person I mentioned made 40 he was so afraid of even applying for the job because he thought he was not going to make as much money, and he ended up making 40% more.
Wow. You don't
So
know
don't
until you
just
try.
assume. Don't
Yeah,
assume. Exactly. Exactly.
absolutely. I'd love to hear from you any other advice you would give to someone who feels like they don't know if they have ADHD or they suspect they do? Like, what would be the first step for them?
Most people have basically before they get any kind of diagnosis, they've generally experienced some situations either in the work or in family or something in some aspect of their lives where they just things were just starting to go south, or they had been going south, and they've maybe people with ADHD often lose friends, lose family members, have, feel out of place, feel like the odd person out, and really can't figure out how to come back into the fray or how to be. So a lot of times they do what's called masking, which is trying to pretend like you're normal,
Yeah.
quote unquote normal. There is no quote unquote normal, but there is typical, I would say neurotypical versus ADHD. So when you have a sense that sometimes for me it took a situation where I hit rock bottom. Sometimes it gets to that point where I got my diagnosis. I was, like I said, much later in life. Other people have parents who can identify it. There's a lot more ways to identify it now than there were back in the olden days. So now it's very easy to go online and do checklists.
Mm.
So find a checklist for typical ADHD characteristics. And if you're above 70%, you're onto something and it's time to get a diagnosis. So I always tell people get that diagnosis to be sure.
And what changed for
Easier said than
you?
done. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, easier said than done, I'm sure. What
Yes.
changed for you when you learned about your diagnosis at 50? Like, can we talk about 50 and to now, like how that's changed in your career?
It changed because I was starting to, just in terms of the work I did, I was working with neurotypical people up to that point,
Mm.
working with everybody. Really, I'm sure quite a few of the people I had did have ADHD, but it wasn't something that was spoken or discussed because I didn't know what to really understand it at that point. But after my diagnosis, I recognized that my actual audience were the people I wanted to work with were people with in the neurodiverse community. So now I work with people in all types of neurodiversity, but primarily ADHD. And so I've never been happier. So I made that choice for myself because I knew that if there were other people like me that I could help because of what my experience was, and it was pretty devastating, by the way. I tell this story to my clients. My class is part of their journey just to explain to them how I got to, most all of them can recognize themselves in some way. When I tell them what my journey was, I explain to them. And that's why I do it, because I learned so much from that. And I'm actually a very good student. So it didn't take me long to figure out what I needed to do to make a shift, right? And every day, I'm managing every day. It's certainly not perfect. I still have family issues. I still have, it's a management thing. Unfortunately, medication didn't work for me. So I drink coffee. That's my way of focusing for, especially for doing things like this, where I know I'm going to have to really stay on target here.
Yeah.
But just in my general life, I'm aware of what I like and what I don't like. I'm very
Mhm.
aware of those things. So if I'm approaching something that I don't particularly like, I really prepare myself in advance for dealing with those things. So I've learned a lot. I mean, I really have. And it's not
I
perfect by any stretch. Not by
Yeah.
any stretch. Yeah.
It's one big experiment, it sounds like, but I keep hearing you go back to this theme of just knowing what you want to say yes to and what are absolute no's, and the instances where you don't have a choice, like you have to do something that you maybe don't want to do. It sounds
Yeah.
like you have some coping strategies or some management tools to help you with that.
Yes. Correct.
Mm.
Correct. Yeah. So
Wow.
you have to know your red lines, know what your red
Yeah.
lines are, know what your, have boundaries, understand that we tend to be people pleasers and then we're easily
Yeah.
influenced.
Yeah.
And I'm still easily influenced by, friends and family. It's like sometimes I just think, just somebody tell me what to do. I think
Yeah.
we all kind of have some of that going. But I think I hate to say it, and I don't know how the people listening are going to feel about it, but really the years, just experience and getting older really help too. As long as you're aware of it, it makes the processing of information easier. It makes the sifting and sorting easier, because then you just say yes, no, yes. That is
Yeah.
so much easier for me now, and I so appreciate my own ability to do that. You know, I really do. I just appreciate it.
That
So
makes so much
that's
sense
kind of,
because I feel like the
yeah.
older you get, the less you start to care. Like, you've
You
lived a
don't
certain life and
absolutely.
you're like, your opinion doesn't matter as much as it did when I seeked your approval when I was like in high school or 20, or, like you just have more confidence in yourself, but you also
Yes.
know so much more about yourself with the more lived experience. And I just want to like
Yes.
acknowledge you because what I'm hearing so much is just intentional lifestyle design through
Yes.
trial and error and getting to the point where you feel confident enough to just say, this isn't honoring myself. So I'm going to say no to this. And I'm okay with disappointing somebody potentially because I know
Mhm.
that this is going to serve me more in the end.
Yes. And ultimately them.
Absolutely. Like, oh, it's a win win for
It's a
both
win-win.
parties. Yeah.
Yes. And you can
Um,
find alternatives. Yes. Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Shell, I love this conversation. I also want to be conscious of the time. Is there anything else you want to share to our listeners that are navigating their careers with ADHD?
Yes. I mean, can I tell them about my 8 week
Uh,
career move masterclass?
of
Yeah.
course.
So
Talk to us
I
about it.
have a masterclass that goes 8 weeks, and we go through, it includes a book. So the book is part of it. The book that I wrote was after having worked with people for 15 years and working with a different book that didn't work anymore. So I had to find a way to make it more ADHD friendly and easier to navigate and more engaging. And I did that. So the book it is available. It's called A Course for ADHD Adults and Teens Unlock Your Career Path. And it is available on Amazon. It's also available on my website, which is Career Coaching with Shell, SHELL.com. And I also have something that I want to offer you guys. Oh, you can learn a lot. By the way, you can learn a lot about me and what I do by going there. And then the masterclass is a link. It's a whole page that explains what it is. With book a session with me. You can book an intro call with me and see if it might be a good fit. I'm always open to that. That's my favorite thing to do. But also, you can go to the website and download the smile file, which I created, how to create your smile file, which is one of the things that we actually do. It's like part of the class, the overall, but you can get started on doing that. So that's a good way to just get started on really seeing how it feels to just take pictures of and identify things that make you smile. right? That's the first step, isn't it?
Ah,
So yes, you can download that and get that on my from my website and talk to me. So, schedule an intro call.
I love that. And just so I understand, or our audience understands, is this anyone with ADHD that's looking to find a more fulfilling career?
Absolutely. Yes.
Beautiful. All right. That sounds like a great
Anyone?
resource to check out.
Yeah. And so if even for the people without ADHD, the Smile File actually is a good resource. It really
Love it.
is.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say I feel like this episode is definitely for neurotypical people too. Like we covered so much that
Yes.
I think delves into just best practices and principles that apply to any
Yes.
human. But
Yes.
I especially love that you have these resources for ADHD folks because I know
Yes.
from just working with some of my clients, they feel like it's just really hard to exist in the world that has been structured and created this way. And
Hmm.
I love just all of the empowering and practical advice that you've given because
Hmm.
no matter where you are in your journey, there's and I know it's easier said than done, but with deliberate action and intention, I would love everyone to become one of the clients you shared, which is finding a work and a career that really lights them up and
Hmm.
allows them to be successful and get paid, whatever success looks like in their eyes.
Yeah, and you get to define that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so the book is actually it's for everyone.
Beautiful. I
It's
love
for
it.
everybody. We always like to say any tools and resources that are created for people with ADHD are perfect for everyone.
Yeah, so
They
true.
just break it down more. They just make it more engaging and fun. That's all.
Love it. It's the
Yeah.
galaxy. I
It's the
have
galaxy.
one
Yeah.
last question, which is I ask all client or all guests this. How do you cultivate more joy in your life?
I think I kind of talked to it.
The smile file?
Um, well, just finding things to make me smile. Yeah, I mean, just really noting the things that I don't like, and staying away from those things and really trying to. Since I'm not a great planner, right? I am not the best at planning. Planning this trip was a big deal for me,
Mhm.
right? And I have to plan so far in advance. So that's kind of one thing I do is like, if I want to go anywhere, I have to plan way far in advance to
Yeah.
do it. So if I think about doing it today, I try and get on the horn and make some plans to do it so I don't have to think about it anymore. So
Mm.
that's kind of where I find joy. And spending more time with my family and friends, of course.
Yeah. And I love that you're doing your first ever tour guide thing because they do all the planning, right? Like you just pay and then they tell you, like, here's our itinerary, this is your
Yes.
schedule. So
Yes.
maybe that'll be your new way of traveling or go on cruise
I'll see
ships.
how this goes, but I'm pretty excited about not having to plan anything. That's really great.
Yeah. That sounds like
Yeah.
you're designing your life the way you want it.
Yeah, just planning the excursions, that's all. The
Beautiful.
excursions.
Well, thank you so much, Shell, for your time today and all your knowledge.
Yes.
It was so much fun getting to talk to you.
Thank you, Emily. It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I truly love how Shell and I have the same philosophy and outlook on lifestyle design and career design. Knowing yourself and knowing what roles and environments are going to allow you to show up as your best self is truly how you have a fulfilling career. And with that clarity, trust me when I say any career pivot is possible. In day one of our bootcamp training, I shared you need to know your what and your why. The how will figure itself out. There's so many job search strategies, and inside our program, the Happily Hired Formula, I teach 8 different ways that you can land your dream job. And it doesn't have to be overnight. So you're going to make multiple career pivots. You're going to make multiple career moves. You're going to have multiple career opportunities. But the one thing that I care most about and why I'm so passionate about Happily Hired Formula is that You know how to design a life vision. You know how to combat all of those beliefs and thoughts and habits and patterns and subconscious limitations to go after and hold what you really want. In the program, I'm more interested in helping you master job search skills. I'm more interested in helping you master how to become more confident and fully expressed. Because when you can do those things, the job is a byproduct. The dream job is inevitable. Your success is inevitable. And we've had so many clients start off feeling stuck and overwhelmed to following this roadmap and just being like, okay, this is a skill that I can learn. Okay, this is the next action step that I put into place. Okay, this is the progress that I'm making, so that they end up on the other side of like, wow, I did that. I did all those things to get hired at my dream company, my number one organization that I put on my vision board. I have a job here. I'm in this role. I'm in this industry. I'm in this organization. I'm in this location, even when I wasn't the most qualified candidate on paper. That to me is why I'm so passionate about this work, because in order to do that, you need to up-level your thinking. You need to up-level your vision. You need to up-level who you are today in order to be able to go after what you truly want. Because our ego mind will keep us safe and stuck. It will keep us playing small. It will keep us going from one crappy job to another crappy job. But if you're truly ready for a dream job, then I'm going to really encourage you to join us inside of the Happily Hired Formula, because our whole team of life coaches, recruiters, and HR experts turned career coaches are here to take out the guesswork. We're here to help you navigate each of the obstacles, the inner obstacles and the outer obstacles. I call them the mindset and the strategies to get to where you ultimately want to be. Everything is figure outable. That's one of my favorite quotes from Marie Forleo. And in order to get to where you want to be, oftentimes you just need some accountability. You need expert advice. You need consultation. You also need coaching and support to help you overcome your own limitations. And that's exactly what we do in this 6-month group coaching program. It's one of the only programs out there that focus on mindset. If, again, you are looking at career coaching support, you want to hire a career coach, I would love to support you along with my team to get you to the other side. You can take a look at the show notes or go to www.cultivate.com/HHF and learn more about the $300 off discount we have through July 7th and also our fast action bonuses. All right, I think that's it for now. I will be back next week in your ear. And if you've joined us inside of Happily Hired Formula, by the way, congratulations. I can't wait to support you and see where you end up landing this year. All right, take care and many blessings. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed it and you're not following me on social media already, come follow me and join the conversation on our latest post. I'm over at Cultivate, or you can visit our website, cultivate.com, and learn more. And don't forget to hit subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss another episode. I can't wait to connect with you again soon. Have a joyful day.